The grainy security footage from a frantic downtown intersection on a Tuesday afternoon is something the local police department still finds difficult to explain. In the middle of the chaotic rush hour traffic, an elderly man with a white cane is seen stumbling, visibly disoriented and caught in the path of an oncoming delivery truck. He is lost in a world of darkness, unaware that he is seconds away from a tragedy. But then something miraculous happens. A Labrador named Cooper, a dog that had been officially rejected from the Guide Dog Academy for being too emotional, suddenly breaks away from his handler across the street. Without a single command or harness to guide him, Cooper lunges into the intersection, placing his own body directly between the man and the massive vehicle. He does not bark or move, he simply stands his ground, forcing the truck to a screeching halt. This was the moment everyone realized that Cooper's failure was actually a hidden gift, a miracle that proved some connections go far beyond what a training manual can teach. This is the story of a man who lost his sight and a dog that saw everything through the lens of the heart. Arthur lived in a world where the sun had set years ago and never rose again. At 72, his life was confined to the four silent walls of a small house that smelled of old books and cedarwood. After the passing of his wife, the silence had become a heavy, suffocating cloak. He navigated his home by memory, counting the steps from the frayed armchair to the kitchen counter and back again. To the neighbors, he was the invisible man on the corner, a shadow that occasionally appeared behind a window. Arthur's greatest fear wasn't the darkness itself, but the feeling that he was a burden, a man whose connection to the vibrant world outside had been severed by a pair of clouded eyes. He spent his days listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of a grandfather clock that seemed to mark the seconds of a life that was slowly fading into total isolation. In a high-tech training facility 30 miles away, a golden Labrador named Cooper was facing his own version of rejection. Cooper was brilliant, fast, and physically perfect, but he possessed a flaw that the instructors couldn't fix. He was too empathetic. While other dogs focused strictly on the path ahead, Cooper would stop if he felt his handler's heart rate spike or if he sensed a wave of anxiety. Through the leash. In the world of professional guide dogs, this sensitivity was seen as a dangerous distraction. The Academy records labeled him as emotional and unreliable, a dog that cared more about how a person felt than where they were going. After months of failed assessments, Cooper was officially disqualified. He sat in his kennel watching his siblings graduate and leave with their new partners while he remained behind a beautiful failure that no one wanted to take home because he cared too much. Two broken spirits were being held apart by the world's definitions of success and capability. Arthur believed he was too old and fragile to ever find a companion, and Cooper believed he was a mistake that didn't fit the mold of a hero. They were both living in the margins of society, waiting for a purpose they feared would never come. Arthur didn't need a robot with a harness, he needed a friend who understood the weight of his loneliness, and Cooper didn't need a trainer, he needed someone who would finally see his sensitivity as a strength rather than a weakness. The atmosphere inside the local community center's adoption hall was a chaotic symphony of barking, heavy footsteps, and the high-pitched chatter of families looking for puppies. But for Arthur, the world was a blurred haze of noise and the constant, cold tapping of his cane against the linoleum floor. He sat on a wooden bench in the far corner, his shoulders hunched, feeling like an island of silence in a sea of sound. He wasn't there to find a service dog. He was there because a persistent social worker had told him that a companion might fill the house. To Arthur, it felt like an impossible task. How could he choose a friend he could not see? Across the room, Cooper was being led by a frustrated volunteer. The golden Labrador was dragging his paws, his head low, ignoring the children who tried to whistle at him and the treats being offered by eager couples. To the observers, he looked broken, a dog that had simply given up on trying to be what everyone expected. The volunteer sighed, heading toward the exit, passing the quiet corner where the old man sat. But as they drew near Arthur, the leash suddenly went slack. Cooper stopped. He didn't bark, he didn't pull. He simply stood still, his nostrils twitching as he caught a scent that felt like a memory from a forgotten dream. He turned his head slowly toward the bench. The volunteer tried to tug him away, but the dog remained anchored to the floor, His eyes locked onto the elderly man who sat staring into a void. It was as if they had known each other in a previous life, two travelers who had finally recognized a familiar rhythm amidst the noise. Arthur felt a sudden shift in the air, a warmth that wasn't there a moment before. He heard the soft, rhythmic panting of an animal very close to his knees. He froze, his breath hitching in his chest. Is there someone there? He whispered, his voice trembling with a vulnerability he hadn't shown in years. Cooper didn't wait for a command. He moved with a deliberate, slow-motion grace, closing the small gap between them. He didn't jump up. He didn't lick Arthur's hand with frantic energy. Instead, he leaned his heavy, velvet-soft head gently onto Arthur's bony knee. He let out a long, shuddering sigh, his entire body relaxing as he pressed his weight against the old man's leg, offering himself as a steady anchor in the darkness. Arthur's hand moved tentatively, his fingers shaking as they hovered in the air. When he finally touched the top of Cooper's head, he felt the thick, warm fur and the steady heartbeat of a creature that wasn't judging him for his blindness. He felt Cooper's tail give a single, slow thump against the floor, a heartbeat echoing through the wood. A language without words passed between them in that silence. It was the sound of a heart finally finding its missing piece. A single tear escaped Arthur's clouded eyes, tracing a path through the deep wrinkles on his cheek. He slid down from the bench to the floor, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck, burying his face in the golden fur. For the first time in a decade, the darkness didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a shared sanctuary. The hall full of people seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in a perfect, golden silence. Their hearts had found each other, proving that the most important things in life aren't seen, but felt in the absolute stillness of a soul finally coming home. The video of Cooper's split-second rescue at the intersection, followed by the heart-wrenching footage of his first connection with Arthur, didn't just circulate, it set the internet on fire. Within days, it had amassed over 20 million views, sparking a global conversation about the unmeasurable qualities of service animals. People who had once overlooked the rejected dog were now hailing him as a guardian angel. But the real transformation was happening far from the glare of computer screens. Arthur's small house, once a silent tomb of memories, is now filled with the rhythmic tail thumping and the soft clicking of paws on hardwood floors. Arthur no longer sits by the window waiting for time to pass. He is back in the world. With Cooper by his side, he has navigated through local parks, coffee shops, and has even regained the confidence to visit the grocery store on his own. Cooper, the dog who was labeled too emotional for the academy, has found his true calling. He doesn't just lead Arthur around physical obstacles. He senses Arthur's sadness before it even takes root, nudging his hand or bringing a worn-out slipper to remind him that he is never alone. The training academy that once disqualified Cooper even reached out to Arthur, using their story as a case study to redefine what makes a perfect guide dog. Arthur's life was saved from the brink of total isolation, and Cooper's life was saved from the label of being a failure. Together, they are living proof that sometimes being too sensitive is exactly what the world needs to heal. They aren't just a man and his dog. They are a team that has redefined what it means to truly see. We spend so much of our lives relying on what we can see, judging the world by outward appearances and rigid standards. We often label a spirit as broken or unfit, simply because it doesn't follow a predefined manual. But Arthur and Cooper have shown us that the most profound truths are often invisible to the naked eye. Cooper wasn't a failure because he was too sensitive. He was a miracle because he cared enough to stop when the rest of the world kept moving. Their bond reminds us that true guidance isn't just about steering someone away from a physical obstacle. It's about navigating the shadows of the human heart. Sometimes, the very thing the world rejects as a weakness is the exact strength needed to save a life. As we leave their story today, remember that sight is a function of the eyes, but vision is a function of the soul. There are some things that the eyes can never see, but the heart of a dog will never mistake. Thank you for joining us on this journey of compassion and for believing in the power of second chances. Until next time, may you find the courage to see with your heart.